Every couple of weeks, there's a new right-wing book that comes out and immediately shoots into the New York Times top sellers list. And as an outsider, it's always seemed weird that this movement that's so anti-intellectual, hates the very concept of reading, they do sell a lot of books. And it turns out there's a reason for that, and it's lying and gaming the system. And so I wanna break down my findings from looking back over a year of the New York Times bestsellers list. The reason this came up, by the way, is because Don Jr. has his new book, Triggered. And I read on Twitter his father saying, wow, was just told that my son's book Triggered is #1 on the New York Times bestseller list. Congratulations, Don. And he actually remembered his name. So it's a good day for Don Jr. And you know what? Elder Donald isn't exactly wrong. If you look at the New York Times bestseller list, Triggered actually debuted at #1. But see, hold on that for a second, because you not only see that it's new, that the name is Triggered, and that really unfortunate picture of Don Jr. that they actually settled for the cover of the book.
I was just thinking that.
Why does he look so sad? But you also see something else. Do you see above that buy button, that little symbol? What's that symbol all about?
It's Jesus endorsed.
No, it's not a cross, it's actually a dagger. And that's interesting. So the New York Times puts those daggers on only a select few books, and there's a reason for it. Institutional, special interest, group, or bulk purchases, if and when they're included, such bulk purchases, appear with a dagger. And what that means is when they, and the New York Times, the way they put all this together is they have connections with a whole bunch of different bookstores, and they analyze sales, and that's how they generate the list. When there's suspicious patterns of sales, they will mark it with a dagger. And what that generally means is, rather than a whole bunch of people coming in and buying the book because they're interested in it, instead huge quantities of books are bought at the exact same time in a bulk purchase. Generally, that is not indicative of consumer interest. Usually, it means that a think tank, a super PAC, an individual, a wealthy donor are buying up books to artificially inflate the numbers. Or, and you've probably seen this, Don Jr. himself is emailing people saying, hey, if you get on this list or whatever, I'll send you a hand signed version of this. So he's bought up a bunch too. And what that actually led me to do is to look back and say, who else has this dagger? It's one thing to say Don Jr. has it, but is this a common thing? Is everyone doing this? And I was not able to find anyone that had gone through and actually accrued this information. So I took it upon myself to go back week by week by week through about 12 or 13 months of the New York Times bestseller list. And I have here all of the ones who had a dagger, and we're gonna go through and we're gonna see if we can divine a sort of pattern. So this is going back in time week by week, so you'll understand. The week before, Dan Bongino had his book Exonerated, new on the New York Times bestseller list at #12, but unfortunately he got there because of bulk purchases. And I expect that he probably won't even be there next week, but that was his debut. Jeanine Pirro's Radicals, Resistance, and Revenge has been on the list for 4 weeks, all 4 of them thanks to bulk purchases, because she had a dagger for every week. And by the way, just to jump ahead, about a year ago, her previous book, that also had daggers for every week. It was like 13 weeks that bulk purchases had kept it on the New York Times bestseller list. Mark Levin, Unfreedom of the Press. I don't know if bulk purchasing to scam the New York Times is an example of that unfreedom, but he's doing it, and he's done it for 4 months straight. Every week, bulk purchases are keeping Mark Levin's book. And by the way, I went back, his previous book also there because of bulk purchasing. We've got Andrew McCarthy's Ball of Collusion. You can probably get what that book's all about. That's there thanks to bulk purchasing. And here's the thing, there's a couple interesting patterns here. So that book by Andrew McCarthy was at #9, thanks to bulk purchasing. That was the only week that it was actually on the list. The next week, apparently the bulk purchasing stopped, so it fell off and he wasn't on the list anymore. And so you might say, well, what's the point then? Well, there is a point, because I went to his Twitter account and he gets to say for the rest of his life, best-selling author Andrew McCarthy. Yeah, sort of, kind of you were, but not in the way that people actually think that actually means something. But there's more going back. Molly Hemingway and Carrie Severino, conservative authors on Brett Kavanaugh, Justice on Trial. You guys should be put on trial for gaming the system. And then you also have not just the people who get onto the list thanks to this, But theoretically, they're all taking a spot for someone who actually should be there. Now, sometimes these are small authors who might have made it to number 10, number 9 for weeks where there's multiple daggers. But sometimes even at the top. So not that long ago, a few months back, Howard Stern comes out with his new book, Howard Stern Comes Again. Great title. He's at number 1, no dagger. But he only stays at number 1 for 1 week because the next week, Mark Levin's book comes out and replaces him with a dagger. Howard Stern would never get back to number 1 because Mark Levin was taking it artificially. Now look, it's not like Howard Stern needs the help. Dude's wealthier than God, he'll be just fine. But based on actual consumer interest, he should have been there.
Because the reason for this bestseller list in the first place is to let people know who haven't been following what good books are out. Which good books are out? What's everyone interested in? If you're gonna go to the movies and you ask them, hey, so how was the new Joker movie? Because I keep hearing about it, but I don't want to go waste my money if it's no good.
Yeah.
So you want an endorsement. So there's an endorsement from which is supposed to be a nonpartisan source to let you know this is what the general public is interested in reading right now.
They want it.
So you're supposed to go, oh man, Triggered must be a good book because a lot of people are reading it and buying it, right?
We may never know because apparently nobody's actually going to read it. Imagine if Joker was number 1 box office week after week after week and you kept going into theaters, sold out theaters, but no one was there. The tickets have been bought, but nobody shows up. What would that tell you about the actual power of Joker as a cultural force? Yeah. But we would know that would be obvious. But with this book thing, everybody thinks that right-winger books sell. That's what sells. But as I'm going back, and I just did a year, it's almost all right-wing pundits. I'm gonna show you some more. And by the way, I'm also gonna point out the right-wingers who didn't do this because there are a few. So first of all, you might think, oh, Ben Shapiro, intellectual gladiator, free speech guy, super popular amongst the young, right? Maybe, we don't know, at least when it comes to his books, because his book, The Right Side of History, 6 weeks in, was still doing bulk purchases to stay there. And just so you're sure, let's go to the next graphic. On its debut week, it was also being bulk purchased. So he was number 1, I guess, kind of, who knows? Did anyone read that book? We have no idea. And so you had him with The Right Side of History. You got Mostly Sunny by Janice Dean of Fox and Friends. She was on the list for 2 weeks, and she also claims to be a best-selling author thanks to that. You've got Corey Lewandowski's book. That was a lie on the list at number 11, only thanks to bulk purchasing. So here's the thing, there's a few others. Jason Chavitz's book, bulk purchasing. Glenn Beck's book was only on the list for 1 week, even with the bulk purchasing. That's sad, Glenn, that's really sad. Dinesh D'Souza, Death of a Nation, 3 weeks, 3 daggers. Michael Savage, only for 1 week, and only at number 11, and only because of bulk purchasing. But here's the thing, not everyone is doing this. So I assumed when I started this that I was gonna catch the biggest fish. That's Bill O'Reilly and Tucker Carlson, whose books always are bestsellers, right? Well, I went through, no daggers. They were on the list for 12 weeks, 14 weeks. They made number 1, by the way, both of them, when those last books started, they did not use these daggers. And so you can sell these books hypothetically, but for people like these Fox News personalities, for Ben Shapiro, it's all a pack of lies.
Yeah, the objective is to get those daggers for those other groups. For these other guys who, even though they can have deplorable points of view or skewed approaches to their books, like the Bill O'Reillys and the Tucker Carlsons of the world, at least there's enough people who want to read the skewed and ridiculous things they have to say. It doesn't change that, but at least there's people that are willing to do that.
Yeah.
More power to those people to spend their money on those books. Like I've always said, I don't care what people do with their money. I don't really care. Do it. It's just a matter of being honest about about the readership of your books. Because then after that, what happens? The speaker fees go up. You now get invited to things. So it's
you also sell more books.
Yeah, you sell more
because
books all the time because there's this false sense of this must be a good book. People buy it and it collects dust on the shelf because they're like, man, this first chapter was garbage.
Yeah, and by the way, they weren't the only ones. Brian Kilmeade's book didn't have a dagger, so it is possible. But here's the thing, as I'm going back through this, these were not the only books that had daggers. There's like 10 others. Weird, mostly non-political books. So this YouTuber named Matt Best had a dagger. Ben Folds of Ben Folds 5 daggers all the way through. For some reason, Gary Sinise, the actor, had daggers. Howard Schultz, by the way, he's one of the political ones, not on the right, that had daggers. There's a book, Thirst, which is by the leader of Charity Water, that nonprofit. used daggers to get on there, probably through that organization actually. And here's the thing, other than the ones I've named, there's like maybe 5 for the entire year. I'm not exaggerating, you can go back and you can check it yourself. It is almost entirely right-wing political books that are getting these daggers. Left-wingers, by the way, if there was a single one, I would have listed it. There isn't. Preet Bharara's on there without it. Any number of different political commentators and pundits, if they make it on the list, they make it because people are actually buying their books. If you don't like that, if that's inconvenient for me to point out, then you can go back through this yourself and you can find it. And it's not to say that nobody's buying the books, but clearly the system is being gamed. And the idea that now we believe as a country that this is actually popular stuff, that people give a damn what Mark Levin says or what Ben Shapiro says, when the only way they can make it on these lists is by gaming the system. And coincidentally, on other lists where you can't do that, things like Amazon, they almost always score much lower in terms of their ranking. I think that we need to acknowledge this as a country, and the New York Times need to do a better job of weeding out artificially boosted sales.
Yeah, it's a small indication. And also, but to give some credit to Don Jr., at least now with this newfound book deal, or success with his new books. His next 2 books have already been slated. It's Faster Than the Speed of Love and Wish It, Want It, Do It. Next 2 coming out for Junior. They're gonna be top sellers.
That's something, but I don't remember the reference. Thank you for watching this clip from the Damage Report. For more content from the show and access to TYT Network members-only exclusives, go to tyt.com/Brooke. Wait, no, it's tyt.com/John. Go to tyt.com/John to sign up.